a world where money disappears, never to be found again. There are places in the world where wealth is not merely protected, it is hidden. We are not talking about a simple tax dodge. We are talking about the architecture of a parallel financial system, a complex and purposefully opaque network built to ensure the absolute secrecy of the world's greatest fortunes. These are our sovereign territories, small, or even business districts in large nations, that have become the pillars of an empire of tax evasion and asset protection. They are the planet's invisible vaults. In these enclaves of secrecy, fortunes transit without leaving traceable digital or fiscal footprints, where astronomical figures replace the names of the owners, and where money is meticulously laundered, multiplied, and shielded from the curiosity of governments, creditors, and crucially from taxation. The official narrative says they are centers of financial efficiency. The dark reality is that they are the perfect refuges for the profits of multinational corporations, for the treasures of billionaires, and, even more worryingly, for capital accumulated through corruption, trafficking, and the misuse of public funds. Today, we will descend into the underground of the global financial system to dismantle, layer by layer, this illusion of legality. We will reveal the obscure and devastating side of tax havens, the mechanism by which wealth is concentrated to the extreme, and the real impact that this industry of silence has on the lives of billions of people and nations, where that money rightfully belongs. Prepare to see how the world's wealth learned to vanish, never to be found again. Block 1. The day wealth learned to vanish. It was in the early 20th century, and particularly after the two great wars and the political and fiscal instability that followed, that the first tax havens emerged, not by chance but by a cold and brilliant economic calculation. Small territories, often lacking traditional natural resources, like oil, gold, or coal, and without the military power to impose themselves on the global stage, realized they possessed something even more valuable and infinitely more portable: laws. The true commodity of these locations was not tourism or agriculture, it was legislative secrecy. They created a revolutionary market niche, offering a radical promise: the total absence of governmental or fiscal scrutiny over foreign capital. This was not an offer of total tax exemption, but rather the guarantee that fortunes would be protected by an impenetrable legal veil. The Channel Islands, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and later, the Caribbean and Asian centers, realized they could transform their geopolitical insignificance into a colossal advantage, selling fiscal sovereignty to whoever could afford it. The move was strategic. While the great powers increased taxes and regulation to fund reconstruction and the welfare state, these microstates did the opposite, competing to offer the least regulated environment in the world. They created shell companies with minimal disclosure requirements, numbered bank accounts where identity was replaced by codes, and confidentiality laws that criminalized anyone who dared to reveal information about clients. And so, from Jersey to the Cayman Islands, from European microstates to districts within the United States itself, like Delaware, these jurisdictions became the most coveted vaults on earth, not for what they produced, but for what they concealed. This was the foundational moment of a new global financial order. The day wealth learned to vanish. The financial disappearance industry was born from a need for asset preservation by the wealthy, but it quickly evolved into a sophisticated vehicle for mass tax evasion, the concealment of trillions in corporate profits, and, inevitably, for money laundering derived from illicit activities. The system operates under a cruel paradox. The secrecy that protects the innocent investor seeking succession planning is the very same secrecy that shields the arms trafficker, the corrupt dictator, or the mega-corporation that denies essential taxes to the countries where it makes its profits. The piles of documents being burned, the vaults being sealed with unbreakable codes, the jurisdictions that promise eternal silence, all of this culminated in the creation of an underworld where capital flows freely, ignoring borders, taxes, and morality. It is a system designed to be invincible, where the only law is that of absolute secrecy, and the only objective is to ensure that wealth, once deposited, becomes a ghost, powerful present but totally untouchable and invisible to those who seek it. Block 2. How to hide wealth in 3 moves. The game of financial disappearance, while multi-billion-dollar and complex in its execution, rests on 3 master moves, choreographed by lawyers, consultants, and investment banks who act as the architects of anonymity. The goal is not just to avoid taxes, but to create a legal, psychological, and physical distance between the fortune and its true owner, making traceability virtually impossible for any tax or judicial authority. Move 1. Create a shell company. This is the starting point. The perfect disguise. The shell company is the empty casing. They are born in jurisdictions like the British Virgin Islands, BVI, or Panama. They have no employees, no real office, and no tangible economic activity. Their address is often a mailbox in a law firm that houses thousands of other companies. They are registered quickly, sometimes in a matter of hours. The shell company is not a business. It is merely a name, a letterhead, a legal vehicle for concealing assets. It is the first layer of the onion, and often the hardest to penetrate. Move 2. Transfer the money to an exempt account. Once the facade is created, the real money is transferred. This is the phase of creative accounting and transfer to bank accounts in tax havens that guarantee zero rate or minimal residual taxes on profit. The money becomes clean simply by having transited through a jurisdiction that refuses to soil its hands with its provenance. The sum is now a cold, anonymous number on a spreadsheet. Move 3. Use layers of intermediaries. The final secret to ensuring invisibility is opacity through complexity. No one uses a single shell company. The safest method involves creating a complex chain of shells and trusts, nested within each other, crossing multiple jurisdictions. Company A, B, VI is owned by Company B, Panama, which is controlled by a Trust C, Jersey, which in turn is managed by an Administrator D, Switzerland. BT's point, the money trail is so tangled that it is virtually impossible for an external investigator to determine who the true owner of the fortune is. The ultimate beneficial owner. With each new layer, the investigation cost and the legal barrier increase exponentially. This is the endgame. The annihilation of transparency through the bureaucracy of secrecy, transforming money into a legally protected ghost that lives in the shadows of the global financial system. Block 3. The planet's biggest hiding places. In the dark cartography of the global financial system, there are names that resonate with the promise of secrecy and fortune. Some are tiny islands, others are consolidated financial hubs, but all share the same philosophy: the primacy of secrecy over transparency. These are the planet's biggest hiding places. The cathedrals of invisible capital, where the law is an impenetrable shield rather than a rulebook. The Cayman Islands, the epitome of the Caribbean tax haven. This British overseas territory houses more registered companies than its human population. It is a location of choice for the formation of hedge funds and special purpose vehicles. Its economy is not driven by paradise tourism, but by the industry of secrecy. Here, the numbers are overwhelming. The volume of assets transiting through its financial institutions far exceeds the scale of its gross domestic product (GDP). It is the center where global high finance takes refuge, operating on a scale that defies understanding. Luxembourg, the small Grand Duchy in the heart of Europe, is a silent colossus. It does not resemble the image of tropical islands. It is a continental tax haven, sophisticated and discreet, that administers trillions. Its specialty is the favorable tax regime for holding companies and the complex structures of intercompany loans that allow multinationals to move profits out of high-tax jurisdictions, using the European Union as a springboard and shield. It is proof that a tax haven can exist and thrive within one of the world's most regulated economic blocs. Panama, eternally linked to major data leaks. Panama has cemented its reputation as a center of anonymity through the aggressive use of shell companies and a legal industry dedicated to creating secrecy vehicles. Its strategic location and history of flexible laws have made it a nerve center for capital-seeking discretion at any cost, from political fortunes to oligarchs' money. Singapore represents the Asian powerhouse of modern secrecy. This island state does not just compete with Switzerland. In many aspects, it has surpassed it, with relentless political stability and a zero tolerance policy for petty crime contrasted with surprising flexibility for illegal tax avoidance. Singapore attracts billions in Asian, European, and American wealth. It is a cutting-edge financial center that offers the latest technology in wealth management, with secrecy packaged in efficiency and modernity. Delaware, USA, a domestic tax haven within the United States. The state of Delaware offers one of the fastest and most anonymous ways to form a corporation, with minimal disclosure requirements. Millions of American companies, and many foreign ones, are registered in this jurisdiction, which allows them to operate with a layer of opacity that would be unacceptable in other states. It is the final paradox. One of the world's greatest proponents of global transparency hosts one of its biggest blind spots within its borders. These locations don't just store money, they store power. The power that comes from controlling vast sums without accountability. The power to influence economies, politics, and justice itself. And that is why, no matter how hard governments try, these hiding places continue to be defended tooth and nail by the elite who depend on them. Block 4. The fortunes nobody admits to owning. Behind the layers of shell companies, trusts, and banking secrecy resides the final product of this system, the fortunes that define and distort the world, but which no one is willing to publicly admit to owning. The hidden vaults of tax havens are the silent repository for a vast and heterogeneous collection of wealth that shapes our planet, yet refuses to be taxed or held accountable. These treasures are not merely the result of astute tax planning. They are the culmination of an unprecedented accumulation of capital, often diverted from its original social and economic function. First, the treasures of billionaires and the fortunes of ultra-high-net-worth families sleep here. For this global elite, tax havens are essential for succession planning and for ensuring that their vast capital is permanently insulated from political turbulence, progressive tax rates, and public visibility. We are talking about super yachts, priceless art collections, private jets, and vast luxury properties, all technically owned by anonymous companies on small islands, far from the scrutiny of public ownership registers. Secondly, we find the untaxed profits of global corporations here. The world's largest multinationals, from technology to pharmaceuticals, use offshore jurisdictions as artificial profit centers. Through sophisticated transfer pricing schemes and the payment of royalties to themselves in tax havens, these corporations manage to register their profits where taxes are zero, while registering costs where taxes are high. This represents trillions of dollars diverted from public budgets, funding global inequality. And, most darkly, the vaults hold fortunes accumulated through corruption, trafficking, wars, and authoritarian regimes. This is the dirtiest capital, the product of diverted economies from poor countries, bribe money, and the profits of criminal networks. Tax havens provide the crucial infrastructure that allows dirty money to become legally clean, the perfect laundry for globally illicit capital. Dictators and oligarchs use these structures to ensure that, even if they fall, their fortunes remain intact and out of the reach of their own people. It is not just savings and profits. It is the hidden inheritances of royal families, diverted funds from failed states, and speculative capital that funds all manner of global activities. The list grows every day because the demand for anonymity and protection from taxation is an insatiable appetite of the financial elite. The wealth in these vaults is not static. It is an active power that, by refusing to participate in the common tax system, undermines the financial health of democracies and exacerbates the distance between those who govern and those who are governed, ensuring that real power remains untouchable in the shadows. Block 5. The invisible and devastating price. The narrative of the tax haven is often presented as a distant game, a niche of high finance with no impact on daily life. However, this is the system's greatest and most dangerous illusion. The reality is that all the wealth hidden and untaxed in invisible vaults creates a visible and palpable poverty in the streets and economies around the world. Secrecy comes at a price, and that price is not paid by those who guard it. It is paid by the majority of the global population. The cost is measured in absence. For every dollar, euro, or pound that legally vanishes into an offshore account in Jersey or Cayman, there is a corresponding absence of essential social investment. It is a system of passive extortion. Money is removed from fiscal circulation in a way that erodes the financial foundation of the state. The numbers are shocking. It is estimated that trillions of dollars are hidden, and the annual global loss of tax revenue due to corporate and individual evasion is enough to fund solutions to some of the planet's greatest challenges. For every dollar that vanishes, hospitals are not built or adequately equipped. Think of the waiting lines, the obsolete equipment, the lack of medical staff. It is the health of a nation sacrificed at the altar of financial secrecy. Fair wages are not paid to teachers and civil servants, deteriorating the quality of essential services. Schools cease to exist or operate in precarious conditions, denying the future to entire generations. This is particularly devastating in developing countries, where capital flight represents a colossal share of the GDP, depriving them of the capacity to self-sustain and fight extreme poverty. The invisible price manifests in fragility and inequality. When the wealthiest and the most powerful corporations manage to nullify their tax obligation, the burden is inevitably shifted to the middle and lower classes through indirect taxes and service cuts. This not only makes entire economies more fragile in the face of crises, but makes societies more unequal, more polarized, and more unjust. The absence of fair taxation destroys the social contract. The people work and pay, while the elite operate outside the rules, becoming untouchable. Therefore, what is being paid is not merely a service fee to an offshore lawyer. It is the cost of lost opportunities, of shortened lives, of crumbling infrastructure, and the erosion of faith in democratic institutions. It is the price of fiscal impunity, a burden that falls heavily on the shoulders of those least able to bear it. Secrecy comes at a price, and the bill is presented daily, manifested in misery and the widening global disparity. Block 6. The megaleaks that tore the veil. For decades, the offshore system operated with near-total impunity, protected by its own legal complexity and the silent complicity of governments and financial institutions. It was a bulletproof world until the first cracks appeared, not through state action, but through anonymous courage and the ability of millions of documents to spill into the public domain. The megadata leaks tore the veil of secrecy wide open. We are talking about the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, and most recently, the Pandora Papers. These were not merely information leaks. They were global-scale journalistic intelligence operations, orchestrated by consortiums of investigative reporters who received and analyzed terabytes of data from the servers of law firms and offshore service providers. Suddenly, the ghost of anonymous wealth took shape in names. The codes and shell companies were unraveled, linking the hidden fortunes to real individuals in power. The documents exposed a shocking web of beneficiaries that cut across every sector of the global elite. The headlines confirmed what many had suspected. Presidents, heads of state, and ministers from around the world were revealed to be using offshore companies to hide their wealth, often in direct contradiction to their public rhetoric of transparency. Celebrities and public figures used the system to avoid taxes on their multi-million-dollar incomes. Billionaires and corporations were caught manipulating global rules for their own benefit. Most shockingly was the revelation that even charities and churches used the offshore system to manage their assets opacally, undermining public trust. These leaks had a seismic impact. They did not lead to the immediate collapse of the system. Its resilience is too great, but they generated a tsunami of scandal and public pressure. They triggered criminal investigations in dozens of countries, led to the fall of political figures, forced the opening of parliamentary inquiries, and crucially compelled major financial centers to slightly tighten their transparency rules, particularly through the creation of beneficial ownership registers, albeit often incomplete. The leak served as a brutal mirror to the world, confirming that the rules of the game were different for the elite, and that the offshore system is not just an anomaly, but a central feature of the global economy. The silence was broken, and the proof of collusion between power, law, and money was displayed on screens across the planet. The lesson from these scandals is clear. No matter how high the wall of secrecy, there is always a source willing to tear it down, exposing the truth behind the numbers. Block 7. The current race to destroy or protect tax havens. We have reached the end of our descent into the underground of the financial system. What we have discovered is not paradise beaches or isolated islands. They are shadows. Tax havens are the gigantic shadows cast by financial power. An ecosystem designed for invisibility, where the law serves to protect, not to expose. This system is the result of a bitter truth. True global wealth, the wealth that moves markets and controls nations, always flows to silence. It seeks refuge, not accountability. It multiplies in anonymity. And in this environment, power becomes untouchable, immune to taxation, to criticism, and, often, to justice. The easiest question is, why do these places exist? The answer, as we have seen, is simple. They exist because there is a global clientele willing to pay a premium price for secrecy. The difficult question, the one that truly must resonate, is, who really wants them to cease to exist? Think of the fortunes we have observed, the corporations that benefit, and the power structures that depend on this opacity to remain at the top. The answer to that question defines the future of economic equality and social justice on our planet. The fight for transparency is not just a fiscal issue. It is a battle for the soul of our democracy. If this journey through the shadows has piqued your curiosity and indignation, if you feel this story needs to be told, leave your comment. Subscribe to our channel for more documentaries that seek to unravel the complexities of power and money. Share this video with those who need to know the cost at which the world's wealth is being hidden. And, of course, hit the like button if you believe that transparency should prevail over secrecy. We count on you to continue illuminating the shadows. We have reached the end of our descent into the underground of the financial system. What we have discovered is not paradise beaches or isolated islands. They are shadows. Tax havens are the gigantic shadows cast by financial power. An ecosystem designed for invisibility, where the law serves to protect, not to expose. This system is the result of a bitter truth. True global wealth, the wealth that moves markets and controls nations, always flows to silence. It seeks refuge, not accountability. It multiplies in anonymity. And in this environment, power becomes untouchable, immune to taxation, to criticism, and, often, to justice. The easiest question is, why do these places exist? The answer, as we have seen, is simple. They exist because there is a global clientele willing to pay a premium price for secrecy. The difficult question, the one that truly must resonate, is, who really wants them to cease to exist? Think of the fortunes we have observed, the corporations that benefit, and the power structures that depend on this opacity to remain at the top. The answer to that question defines the future of economic equality and social justice on our planet. The fight for transparency is not just a fiscal issue. It is a battle for the soul of our democracy. If this journey through the shadows has piqued your curiosity and indignation, if you feel this story needs to be told, leave your comment. Subscribe to our channel for more documentaries that seek to unravel the complexities of power and money. Share this video with those who need to know the cost at which the world's wealth is being hidden. And, of course, hit the like button if you believe that transparency should prevail over secrecy. We count on you to continue illuminating the shadows.